when you take your data, you want your strings to be as close to the table as they can. It makes it easier to see what you're doing to the force table without touching and dragging on the table. And you'd like them to all be, you'd like the string to go straight and not be at an angle. So this force would be measuring the straight pulling force. In this picture you can see how we're going to hang the weights. We're going to hang the weights on the bottom of the force probes. So this would be my X, the way I have it set up. This would be my Y. And the instructions say we're going to start with 200 grams in the X and 200 grams in the Y. We will leave the X alone. It will stay at the same weight mass, and we'll increase the mass of the Y by 100 grams all the way up to 600 grams. So I would start with putting 200 on the X and 200 on the Y. Then I would take my LabQuest and I'd read the forces and I'd read the angle from the top of the table. So in step 3, after I put the 200 grams on each of on the X and the Y force probe, my goal is to get a picture that looks like this. And this picture probably doesn't have 200 grams on each, but I want a picture where I'm at a perfect right angle here. And to accomplish that, I'll have to adjust, the person holding the resultant will have to adjust their position, and sometimes it's simpler just to adjust the table a little bit, but you have to keep this at a right angle. And then your LabQuest will read this force, the X force, the Y force, and the resultant force, and then you read that angle, and that's the data that goes in the table. And then you'll repeat that for the masses 300, 400, 500, and 600. And then there's some calculations you have to make, and I'll show you how to do that when I show you the lab notebook, which is coming up. Real quickly, I'm going to go over what I expect you to have in your lab notebook. I will always want a title now. I want Introduction to Vectors Activity, and I do want this diagram in here. There's a picture of the lab notebook on the website, so if you need more time than this video has to draw that diagram, you can always go back to the picture and it'll give you what the whole page looks like. The data that you will have that matches mine or in the table are the 200s for the X mass and the 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. We just put that in grams for the Y mass. We really don't calculate with these. That's just so everybody's in the same ballpark as what your data will be. Then these are my pretend measurements. I've measured my force in the X, force in the Y, and my resultant force in the angle. Those things are what I measure in the lab, and I put them in the table, and of course you would have data all the way down.